We're nearly there. Hello, Mayor Francis.
Hi.
Hello, Nina. Hello, Lisa. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry about those technical issues, which seem to be the curse of the world of online. So, without any further ado, why don't we get going to make best use of everybody's time? We've got an hour till 3 o'clock. First of all, I'd just like to welcome our guests who are sort of increasingly visible as I speak. So Councillor Sabrina Francis, who's the Worshipful Mayor of London Borough of Camden, Mark Hilton from London First, who's their Membership and Skills Policy Director, my board colleague from CDA, Lisa Humphreys, who's WPP's UK Strategy Development Director, and also Chief Transformation and Integration Officer. Gosh, that's a big job, I think. And last but by no means least, Nina Scofield, who's the Apprenticeships Coordinator, or an Apprenticeships Coordinator for Camden, I believe. Yeah. Great, so welcome everybody and welcome to our audience. As I say, this is an hour-long event to close at 3. The agenda is basically a few opening remarks from me, which I'll keep short. Then I'm going to hand over to Councillor Francis, followed by Mark Hilton, then Lisa Humphreys. We've then got a short film on future talent that we've put together, and there'll be a questions and answers session with all of our panelists, including Sam Wickens, hopefully from TfL, who looks after skills and employment delivery for them. And then we'll bring the event to a close. And as Marcus said earlier, please feel free to post your questions in the Zoom facility for that sort of thing, which hopefully will work. And as he also mentioned, this event is being recorded for posterity, no doubt. So hopefully everybody's comfortable with that. So I'm Alex Jan. I'm the chair of the Central District Alliance Business Improvement District, which sits between Farringdon and Holborn, very much in Camden and indeed Islington. And it's my great pleasure to kick off this webinar to launch a new initiative called Your Future Talent. This is a new brokering programme which we hope will bring the business community together with our public sector partners to provide future talent opportunities, job opportunities across what is already a vibrant and diverse area. And I'm delighted to say the project is backed by the Mayor of London and our partners at Camden and Islington Councils. Now, actually, we're launching today in what is National Apprenticeship Week. And so we're obviously very excited about the role we can play in supporting the quest for new talent. I think it's true to say that the sort of war for talent is real. We've seen lots of supply side shortages and labour shortages as hopefully we come through recovery now from COVID. And so it's kind of more important than ever before that we find effective ways to get the next generation of workers into the job market, contributing to the re-energising of London and indeed helping our businesses to grow and prosper. And through Your Future Talent, we're very much encouraging our local businesses such as WPP and others, to embrace the power of the next generation of workers through supporting apprenticeships and showcasing how developing apprenticeship programs can build business success in the long term. And it's clear that there is a real need for this sort of initiative. I mean, I mentioned before some of the challenges around COVID. We've also noted that there are record job vacancies in 13 of 18 sectors, industrial sectors, with about 1.2 million vacancies reported as of November last year, a rise of about 500,000 nearly on pre-pandemic levels. The impact of Britain leaving the European Union is compounding these challenges. As we know, many EU nationals were taking up jobs in London in food and beverage and the hotel sector and other sectors, at the high value added, higher paid sectors as well. So Your Future Talent is in effect part of our positive attempt to row back on some of those headwinds if you can row back on a headwind. And it's really about removing barriers, making it easier for businesses to access talent and for job seekers to access work. And we know we've got a huge opportunity before us because so many young people have been affected by the pandemic. I mean, those of you who follow the numbers will have seen that some boroughs in London had the highest levels of youth unemployment in the country. And indeed, among some ethnic minorities, those numbers were double digit in some areas. And that should be a real area of concern for all of us. And it also is something which shouldn't be forgotten in the broader debate on levelling up that the government is so keen to remind us about. So this initiative is about trying to make those connections and help out here. And we're very lucky in CDA to be located in one of the most exciting parts of London, of central London. It's home to a very strong, vibrant, professional, creative and financial services sector, and indeed hotels, restaurants, food and beverage more generally. And in fact, only Soho supports more creative sector jobs in London. Together, our businesses are part of the powerhouse of the city. We're around 1% of UK GDP, which is quite a big number. And we're also home to not only WPP, but other large businesses in the sort of the tech space and fintech and so forth, including Google, Mindshare, Mishcon de Reya. I think they're a legal firm rather than a tech firm, but anything's possible these days. And then we have sort of world-class hospitality in the form of the Rosewood and Kimpton hotels, as well as a whole host of smaller and medium-sized enterprises and indeed independents. And even if they aren't bid members as such, because they're smaller in size, we see it's so important to be acting in a way which helps to foster their future and help secure it, particularly after what's been so traumatic for so many businesses and people with the COVID pandemic. So the area's already got a lot going for it in terms of this attractiveness and its ability to compete. And hopefully with the opening of the Elizabeth line fully or more fully later this year, the big opportunity is that will bring another 1.5 million people within 45 minutes of central London and our stations that bookend the bid, so Farringdon over the road in Islington and Tottenham Court Road in Camden. So all this, I think, bodes well in terms of recovery and the long-term success of the area, but we don't want things to leave to chance. So we want to be proactive in showcasing opportunities that exist for employing people, and hence we're launching Future Talent this afternoon. And I think it's important to say we see this as an ongoing initiative, which will hopefully allow people to develop, or for us rather, to develop an annual careers event during National Apprenticeship Week. And then for that to be supported, to be bolstered by other events during the year, bringing businesses and potential apprentices and indeed employees together. So I'm thrilled that we're joined today by our speakers, who I've already introduced, and you'll be hearing from them shortly, and hopefully they will be around for the Q&A. Excuse me, but I would just like to thank a few people. I'd like to thank our speakers and the support of Camden and Islington for the bid, which we certainly don't take for granted. I'd really like to thank my team at CDA, led by Debbie and Wayne Lewis, who's recently joined as one of our project managers and is leading on this area of our social value work. And it's really great to be able to have his expertise in guiding the development of the scheme. We've even got our own apprentice now ourselves, which is very exciting, a Camden resident. So we're trying to practice what we preach. And thanks also to our attendees, local businesses, and all those who took part in our promotional video, which we'll show a bit later on. Without further ado, I'm going to stop there. And I'm so sorry, Sabrina, that we're running a bit late, but if I may, could I hand over to you to say a few words, please? Thank you.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for having me, and a big thank you to everyone taking part today. So, as has been mentioned, the employers, the providers, and all the referral partners are all a really important part of the Your Future Talent programme. As we all know, the pandemic has hit businesses really hard. It was estimated that 300,000 Londoners lost their jobs. So this is why I, as Mayor, felt like, hopefully I'm at the tail end of the pandemic, but I should do as much as I can to help small and independent businesses and the hospitality sector and make them one of my themes of the year. I was very aware that they'd all tried really hard to survive, so any help I could offer through openings or making videos for Small Business Day would be gratefully received and would really help Camden and help Camden businesses and also people who are employed in those businesses. I think it's this backdrop that makes the work that the CDA is doing and their approach to supporting young people into work through apprenticeships so important. These roles will create sustainable employment locally and they'll improve the economy, and that's obviously something we're very happy about as a council. Apprenticeships are also really great because of their close connection to businesses. The apprentices hopefully will pick up some really great skills, and that will put them in a good place in the labour market now, but also in the future. So they are really lucky to be on a scheme that's backed by such a great organisation. And I really hope that all the young people taking part have an amazing time on their apprenticeships and they get loads out of it. I was thinking about what advice would I give them, because I didn't do an apprenticeship, but I kind of spent the beginning of my career kind of scuttling around lots of different jobs. And I think my one bit of advice would be ask questions and speak up, because your age, your background and your interests are what make you you, and you will be able to provide valuable insight to the companies that you join. So don't be scared about speaking up with any ideas you have or trying to be as useful as you can be. Finally, I'd just like to quickly finish by wishing the Central District Alliance good luck with the programme, and thank you for supporting and developing the young people of Camden and Islington.
Sabrina, thank you so much for those opening words. As I say, we really appreciate hugely Camden's engagement with us as a bid on lots of fronts, and the fact you've taken time yet again to be involved in this initiative. So thank you for that and those thoughts. I just need to introduce Tricia King, actually, and this is, apologies, my fault, but Sam Wickens from TfL is unwell, so her replacement is Tricia. So Tricia, my apologies. It's part of living in the virtual world, amongst other things. So, and welcome to the event. Mark, your Membership and Skills Policy Director at London First, would you like to share some thoughts from your organisation's perspective, and where you see the opportunities and priorities in the context of the National Apprenticeship Week? Over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me this afternoon. It's great to be here, and like you're saying, I'm from London First, and we're a business membership organisation. Our members are some of the largest businesses in London, across all sectors, from transport to retail, education to tech, and so on and so on. And so many of those businesses will be doing apprenticeships. And Debbie's asked me to say a few words about why apprenticeships are a great benefit for businesses. And so I won't labour the points that have already been made around some of the kind of challenging nature of the London labour market at the moment, although it's worth underlining that the changes that we've seen in London have been profound, and workforce jobs have dropped hugely, unemployment's gone massively up, young people hit hardest, those from ethnically diverse communities have been hit really hard as well. And of course, London was the UK region with the highest take-up of the government's furlough scheme. And now, as we move to recovery, we face another challenge, as others have said, the significant labour and skill shortages that are holding back many employers. We've got record vacancies, And then alongside that, however, we've got London's relatively young population growing at a much faster rate than other parts of the UK. And so London is expected to become the UK's first mega city in around 2025. And here's where apprenticeships can help, tapping into that younger population to fill those skill shortages in the way that is proven to work for business. So why apprenticeships? So this year's National Apprenticeship Week, of course, is taking place at a critical time for the UK and its economy. If we're going to rise to the challenge of recovery and delivering sustainable, inclusive growth, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to access the right training for them is crucial. And to do this, we must better align our education and skills system with new and existing employment opportunities. High quality apprenticeships are an essential ingredient to achieving this goal. And so apprenticeships really matter to business. They're one of the most important links between education and industry, and this connection is long-standing and successful. They've been part of England's education system for centuries, and since 2011, more than around 4 million people have enrolled on apprenticeship. When apprenticeships work well, they benefit employees, young people, communities, and the whole country, not just businesses. And at its best, the apprenticeship system provides employers with access to employees with the skills, knowledge, and behaviours required to succeed in today's workplaces. Apprenticeships also open new pathways into employment. They deepen the pool of labour that businesses can access, and businesses are committed to the apprenticeship scheme. Certainly those in London First membership. It might be worth just spending 1 or 2 minutes on exactly what an apprenticeship is, in case there's anyone out there who's not entirely sure, but I'll be brief because I'm sure you're all on top of this. They're paid jobs which offer learners practical business-led training, which helps them to get a job or a better job. For businesses, they ensure that employees are equipped with the skills they need to drive productivity and keep their business moving forward. Apprentices are entitled to the same benefits as employees, receiving a salary, holiday leave, and contract of employment. And they contain a mixture of on-the-job and off-the-job training. They're likely to include a mixture of learning and assessment delivery models, always with a focus on providing learners with skills, knowledge, and behaviours which are relevant to the workplace. And the minimum duration of an apprenticeship scheme is 1 year, but with some schemes taking up to 6 years to complete. So they offer an exciting option really for both apprentice and employer. And you can employ them at different levels, from school leavers and university graduates through to people who want to further their career or change career direction completely. You can hire someone new or upskill an existing employee, which is why it's great for the reskilling challenge that we've got now. So as an employer, you can get funding from the government to help pay for apprenticeship training. And you can also pay for your training through the apprenticeship levy, which is a 0.5% levy on wage bills for all organisations with an annual wage bill in excess of 3 million. And this levy funding then goes to the organisation's digital apprenticeship account, ready to be drawn down and spent on training as the business requires. And so there are many benefits for businesses and your business in undertaking apprenticeships and making them a big part of your workforce strategy. Hiring an apprentice is a productive and effective way to access and grow talent and develop a motivated, skills and qualified workforce. But don't take just my word for it. Here's some stats on what other businesses think. 86% of employers said apprenticeships help them develop skills relevant to their organization. 78% of employers said apprenticeships helped them improve productivity. And 74% said that apprenticeships help them improve the quality of their product or service. And of course, there's wider benefits, as well as the benefit to your own organization. Society benefits too. So you've got the social value through an opportunity to engage your local community and draw from it a diverse talent pipeline. You've got the supply chain benefit. If you're a large employer, you can support your SME supply chain through transferring unused apprenticeship levy money to them through your digital account, in bulk transfers up to 25% of your total levy funding. And then, of course, there's a wider economic benefit. Apprenticeships can play an important role, as I've said, in productivity and supporting the economy as we move to a post-Brexit, post-COVID landscape. So how do you go about this? Well, of course, there's many FE colleges in London, many training providers, universities, all doing apprenticeships and all ready to help and direct your levy money into the right places. And of course, the government have all their help and support services as well. And if you're an SME not paying the levy, the apprenticeship levy, then of course you can talk to your college provider or government about drawing down funding. So in short, I mean, apprenticeships should be a firm part of anyone's workforce strategy, and particularly now as we're all trying to gear up, bring the talent in, ready for recovery. Thanks, Alexandra. I'll pass back to you.
Mark, thank you so much. That was a really great sort of a little bit of an overview, I think, of some of the broader issues and challenges facing employers, particularly in London, but by no means uniquely so. So thank you for that. I think we'll be coming back to some of the challenges of the apprenticeship levy and the quite large amounts of unused funds that exist, and maybe what, you know, if there are any ideas that we can tap into as to what could be done about that. So thank you, Mark. Lisa, if I could turn to you now, maybe you could give some perspectives from, you know, being one of our larger and very successful private sector employers in the patch, and what the sort of priorities and opportunities are from your perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So again, thank you so much for having me, and it's such an interesting event, and Alex, as you alluded to, an area that WPP have been really embracing in the last several years, but particularly over the last 2 years of the pandemic, it's become increasingly important for us. So I thought it might be useful if I shared one of our programs, our most recent and probably our largest, and then just a few learnings that we've had through the introduction of this program that I thought might be useful for people on the call, just to get an idea of some of the things that we're thinking about as an organisation. For those of you that don't know WPP, we are a big global communications organisation. In the UK, we're about 10,000 employees strong. And I'm actually going to talk about a programme that launched within GroupM, which is our media business, and is about 3,500 people in the UK, the vast majority of whom are based in London. As Mark alluded to in the previous section, we are all struggling with the talent challenges, and we are active in part of the industry which is heavily reliant on digital data and technology skill sets. So I think the first thing to note is you know, those issues were existing pre-pandemic, and they have definitely been accelerated throughout the pandemic. Anyone who is trying to hire someone who has 2 years experience in any industry is finding it extremely difficult at the moment. And so whilst future talent has always been a key tenet of our strategy, it's becoming more and more important and increasingly a brilliant way for us to bring people into our industry. Another thing to note in terms of background within the communications industry specifically is that we are really focused on diversity and inclusion, but historically haven't necessarily been the most inclusive industry. There's a piece of research done pre-pandemic in 2019 that showed that 31% of our senior leaders in the industry, in the advertising industry, were privately educated. And that's against a backdrop of 6.5% being the national average of people who go through the private education system. So we are in similar situation to lots of industries where you find that you're not bringing through the most diverse range of people in terms of their backgrounds, and apprenticeships are particularly important from that perspective. It's really important that we recognise that we can give people the skills they require to do jobs within our industry, within our organisation, and actually having a prerequisite of a graduate programme excludes people from joining in what is such an incredibly interesting and fast-paced industry. And so really we're pushing more and more into areas where we are bringing people in with no experience. We are looking at their skill sets and their aptitude for learning and their desire to do new things and their ability to be creative, and bringing them in and giving them the skills that they need. And that's why programs like this are really important to us. So the specific program that I'm talking about is the Digital Academy. It launched last October, and we've had 100 people go through that program already, and that's really focused on bringing people in and giving them digital data and technology skills to enable them to work within our organisation. So I thought it might be useful just to talk about 5 key learnings from that program that might be useful for some of the businesses on the call. Number one is you need to have senior stakeholder engagement and buy-in into these programs. They take a huge amount of energy and passion and drive, and that means that you need to have that level of support. And for us, we have the challenges around digital skills and that skills gap, and we also have a real desire as an organisation to be representative of the UK population, to whom we are serving millions of pieces of content every year. So really, it really aligns with our strategy. The second, I would say, and kind of echoing Mark's point around the way that apprenticeships are traditionally structured, we've kind of changed the way that we've worked on this programme. And the reason that we've done that is that we wanted people to have maximum impact within the organisation as quickly as possible. And so we've actually front-weighted a lot of the learning. We give people almost exclusive learning opportunities before they move to their on the job, and we really get them up to speed so that they feel like they are, you know, up and running very quickly. And that intensive learning period is 6 weeks on this programme, and then they move into the teams that will become their future roles and continue their training in that way. So I think really thinking about flexibility within the learning aspects of the programme is really important. The third thing, and Alex, you mentioned some of the fantastic neighbours that we have within the district. But you know, we've really used our partners to help us to deliver the absolute best. So we're lucky to call Google, Facebook, Amazon technology partners as WPP, and we've really worked with them to make sure that we build out the best training possible. And we've also used partners to help us find the right talent. And I think if you're working in a smaller organisation, it's really important to know that the support is out there to help you to do that. And the fourth learning we had is to be really broad. So actually lots of the roles that we have within the organisation are quite technical. You need to focus on your craft skill, and you need to really understand the role. And whilst we don't want to detract from that, we also want to give all of our apprentices a real view of what the industry is like, to understand the wider business, and to also help them with some of the I suppose what's traditionally been described as soft skills, to help them to work within an office environment, to manage meetings, to do things that aren't necessarily about the core of their role, but will help them to build their career. And that's absolutely our ambition. And then the final point that we've really learned from previous experience here is to keep talking to our apprentices, to keep them within the organisation, which is our #1 aim, is to help people build careers with us. So we plan lots of connections, not only throughout the year or longer, depending on the scheme that they're involved in. We also plan lots of interactions with their peers, and we plan ahead for the next intakes. So I would say our biggest advert for our programmes are alumni of the previous year's programmes. And so making sure that they are networked and also help us to bring new recruits on board as and when they come up have been a really important learning for us. And the one thing I would say, just as I finish this section, is the 100 individuals that we've had through this programme have come in with no previous experience of our industry. They've had 6 weeks of very intensive training, and their passion and drive and enthusiasm has meant that they've gone into our organisation and have had the most incredible feedback I have ever had for any kind of group of new recruits coming into the business. And I think that if anyone is questioning whether or not this is the right thing for their organisation, I would really say you will be amazed at the results that you get if you put the effort in. So I would really encourage anyone to take that first step.
Lisa, thank you. What a powerful message to end on, because I think what you're really saying, in other words, actually, is that this is sort of has a compelling business case about it. So, you know, not just aiming off for the social value, broader sense of responsibility we as businesses have to the communities we work in and all the rest of it. I think the message is that even the bean counters at WPP are hopefully in favour because of the productivity and the output gains that you get by tapping into this underutilized source of talent. Look, there are some really very interesting points there that I think it would be great to come back and discuss with other panelists, with Tricia and Nina, during the Q&A. I think now is the time for more technological chat. Maybe I should have been an apprentice on your program in terms of technology, but I think now is the time to play the short film, which I think does involve a cameo for our own apprentice as well. So if someone on the other side of the screen could run the film, that would be great. Thank you.
At CDA, we're really passionate about apprenticeships. So what we decided to do was to create a new programme called Your Future Talent, which will really bring businesses and young people from the local communities together. We have direct access to all of our businesses, not just big levy payers, but also really keen to work with small, medium enterprises as well that may need that extra talent.
I chose an apprenticeship because I felt like apprenticeship will allow me to gain qualification as well as working hands-on.
The apprenticeship gave me the confidence to be here today. Recently I've completed my level 3 on supervisor and leading team level.
I think it's really vital for businesses to take on board apprentices. It's a great equaliser, and it means that you're exclusively getting people who want to learn.
Apprenticeship schemes that we run at the Shaftesbury Theatre, predominantly we look at backstage and also front of house. It's important for businesses like us to have apprenticeship schemes in place to bring in new talent. It also helps revitalise the business and give you a new lease of life, because you bring in a lot of energy and a lot of new ideas by bringing in people from walks of life that wouldn't, again, traditionally see theatre as a long-term career.
It's a really broad program, and the benefits from that is just it boosts your confidence, you gain more knowledge, and knowledge is the key nowadays, and the more knowledge you have, the more valuable you are.
So the skills I'm trying to achieve in working with CDA is communication skills, being able to interact with not only clients as well as my colleagues, understanding different kind of backgrounds and cultures.
This is a way of us supporting young people into employment skills and training, and it's an affordable way for them to learn.
It's just a perfect opportunity for me to hit the ground running and be paid to learn as soon as I started.
It allows you to gain qualification, knowledge.
This is a great way of building that experience and gaining it.
You're never too old to learn.
Okay, great. I thought that was wonderful, and I know, Debbie, that we're going to be using that on our social media and various other fronts to help promote our campaigns. Apologies for the reference to the sort of placement for City of Westminster in that film, Sabrina. It wasn't done on purpose. There'll be a full steward's inquiry as to how they got a mention afterwards. But what I'd like to do now is just bring in Tricia from TfL and Nina from Camden. Before we kick off with Q&A, Nina and perhaps then Tricia, is there anything you'd just like to add to what you've heard and what we've been talking about? And then we can go into a little bit of a Q&A session for the remaining time.
No, I really liked, my name's Nina and I'm an apprenticeships coordinator at Camden Council. So I oversee the recruitment of non-construction apprenticeships. We do have a construction service as well, but my team work with managers in the council and also employers in Camden who want to recruit an apprentice. And we just we provide a kind of additional support to employers to navigate their way through from beginning developing the role, identifying suitable training, advertising and finding local candidates, and then supporting the manager to kind of integrate the apprentice into their business, and then kind of providing ongoing support for the duration of the contract. So that's my perspective. But it was really nice to hear from Lisa in particular about how positive your experience has been of apprenticeships. And we hear a lot from employers about the benefits of recruiting locally, which is our focus, because local people can provide a really good insight into elements of the business that other people may not have thought about. And also we want local people to benefit from the success of the economy where they're living. So it's a kind of two-way thing. I think that sums up my perspective.
Yeah, I think, Anita, I know that, you know, being a Camden resident myself, I know that the juxtaposition of very poor or deprived communities with these major centres of employment with, you know, high wages, high productivity is a challenge, not just for Camden, but for many inner London boroughs, in terms of, you know, trying to tap into perhaps people who, for whatever reason, have missed out on those opportunities. And they are incredibly close physically in terms of proximity. But I know this has been a long-standing challenge for the borough. So again, hopefully this sort of initiative can help with that challenge too. So Tricia, welcome again, and my apologies for not introducing you properly earlier. And thank you very much indeed for stepping in on behalf of Sam, who is unwell and couldn't be with us today, from TfL. Again, are there any sort of introductory remarks you'd like to make before we jump into a little bit of a Q&A?
No, I think Lisa said it all brilliantly. Just a couple of observations from me, really. Thank you. It's brilliant to be here. Thank you for inviting us. We've got a long culture and a very, very embedded apprenticeship programme. We take on about 150 apprentices every year in many, many different areas, everything from HR to very different types of engineering. And I think that's really applauding what you're doing in Camden to kind of tie that up and bring it together. Supporting those businesses. There are so many different opportunities for businesses to get involved, different subjects, different levels of apprenticeships. We run everything from level 2 to level 6, so there's almost something for everybody. And fantastic opportunity as well. You mentioned that need in some of our communities and the deprivation. There are young people now who haven't had work experience, they haven't had those opportunities. So to be able to tie that up with kind of employability support and stuff like that to support those young people right through that apprenticeship journey. So just absolutely heartwarming to hear everything that you're doing, and yeah, well done. It's a very exciting programme. I wish you all the best with it. Thanks, Tricia.
I mean, I guess the question for you and maybe for Nina as well, you know, a lot is talked about this apprenticeship levy, and when I was at Arup, you know, we're within Camden up the road from where I am right now, we had an apprenticeship levy too, and as has been mentioned, it's 0.5% of the wage bill type thing. I mean, there seems to be a lot of money that hasn't been spent, that's sort of sitting in this virtual bank account. I mean, question for all the panel really, but is there anything we could do to sort of deal with that, either in terms of, you know, I mean, do you think the government should be trying to highlight that, you know, this money is there, it exists, and it needs to be spent? I mean, or is there something around, dare I say, devolution here? Would that money be better off if it was in the hands of city halls in London? Any thoughts on that from Tricia, if you any thoughts on that, and we'll go to others.
Oh, that's a tough one, isn't it? I think we're working with what's in front of us. It's very difficult to navigate sometimes, particularly for businesses that want to get involved. I think probably the most important thing is that there's a resource like yourself, like this, that can really get under the skin of that and really try to make sense of it, because it's very, very difficult. And alongside the day job, sometimes it's that resource that businesses don't have in their own businesses. I know certainly in TfL, we've got a whole kind of strategy team who are constantly kind of looking at that. We work with our supply chain. We are constantly looking, because we don't have, it's such an important form of funding for our training, which we have always used. But it's hard work to kind of keep on top of that and to work out the programs that we should be running and to work with partners to kind of set those up. So I'm guessing that the more support that you've got centrally, locally, is very, very, very useful.
Okay, thanks, Tricia. Anita, do you find that employers, when you engage them, are aware of the fact they're paying this extra amount, and is your experience that they struggle to spend it or to deploy it? I mean, what's your sense of, is this something we should be trying to get more action on in terms of awareness and understanding, or is it sort of largely an issue that doesn't exist?
Historically, our team, when we work with employers that need support, it tends to be the smaller employers, so they aren't levy payers anyway. The larger employers, generally speaking, have an apprenticeship team so they don't need us, so they don't come to us in the first place to ask for our support. In the council, though, we have unspent levy, which it's a frustration for us that we can't spend, and we do our best to spend it as much as we can. One of the things that we're trying to do is inform smaller businesses that we can share our levy. So even though they only need to pay 5%, for some businesses, especially the very small ones, even 5% is a lot. So we're trying to promote the idea that we can cover that 5% for them via our levy. But we haven't solved it either in the council. I mean, we do our best to use all of our levy, but it's kind of impossible, really.
Yeah, okay, very interesting. And Lisa and Tricia as well, maybe, in terms of this supply chain idea, it sounds great in theory, offering your supply chain partners a transfer of levy. But then, I wonder how that's been received from your supply chains, or how practical it is, the old thing about beware large companies bearing gifts type thing. I mean, have you had any success with that, Lisa?
We have actually been focused on sharing of levy funds across our group, because we're actually a group made up of very large organisations like GroupM and much smaller organisations. So actually we've had success in that area. But I would echo Nina's comments around, it is a challenge, and you have to be incredibly organised, and you have to be planning quite far ahead. And I think for lots of businesses, particularly in the last 2 years, that's been a bigger challenge actually than anything else, is just planning far enough ahead so that you can keep up with your funds and understand where you are in the cycle. And these things expire as well, so you do have to constantly keep on top of that and plan far enough ahead.
Yeah, okay, understand. I mean, Sabrina, from your point of view, do you think, we've talked about this challenge of local connections and helping local, physically very local communities into more work. And I know Camden does have some areas of profound challenge, but do you think, London First and others should be lobbying for sort of more local control of the apprenticeship levy? How does it sort of feature in the sort of challenges and priorities that you think the boroughs have, and Camden has in particular?
I think we have a very good team that are focused on kind of good work Camden and making sure that people in Camden have good jobs, who definitely know more about the detail of this than I do. But I do know there is a lot of value in people being able to live near where they work. It obviously helps the economy, it helps the way they feel about an area. Sometimes local knowledge is really, really useful. At the other end of apprenticeships, we get often comments from consultants or head teachers because they can't keep their staff in the area, and that's also useful. So across the piece, from apprenticeships upwards, there's definitely value in people being able to work and live in a similar area. Brilliant, thank you. And Mark, what's the sort of
what would you say the you know, the sort of more general business view is on unspent funds and things that you've been lobbying for, you know, in terms of devolution of skills and so forth, and how much prospective change would you say there is?
So, I mean, we did a survey just before Christmas, which tried to check in on business sentiment, not just in London, but up and down the UK, and how businesses are using the apprenticeships. And whilst most businesses that we spoke to have plans to increase the number of apprentices they recruit this year, they still find it quite complex, the rules and procedures. And they're getting better for sure. But I think, you know, the more the government, the Mayor of London, the boroughs can help to navigate businesses through the system, and you know, and there's some onus here on central government who sets some of the kind of policy rules to keep finding ways to streamline and strip out annoying bureaucracy. I think that's really important. Our businesses would love to be able to transfer more money to their supply chain. So at the moment, as I said earlier, you can transfer up to 25%, but many of the businesses that we spoke to would like to transfer up to 40%. And that's a really meaningful amount of money that can unlock a lot of social value in the supply chain and jobs through SMEs. I suppose the other thing that we call for, and as you say, Alexander, there is a lot of money that is going unspent, and that's a real shame, particularly when we're, you know, in such desperate needs for skills. What we call for is, instead of that money being returned to the Treasury, because, you know, if businesses can't spend it, then after a certain period it goes back to the Treasury to be reallocated. Instead of that, we should keep that money in London and set up a London Apprenticeship Fund and use that money to support businesses that have been most affected by COVID or are being most affected by things like automation. So yes, devolution is a good idea.
Great. Okay, thanks, Mark. And a question that's just come in from Dress for Success, which I believe is a charity which helps to give people the physical and other means, you know, to be more successful in interviews and so forth. I mean, are they the sort of organisation that an employer could transfer some of the levy to, or does it have to be sort of, you know, people building buses for TfL type things? Do you know, Mark? Well,
there are organisations like the London Progression Collaboration, which was set up by the Mayor with funding from the JP Morgan Foundation and support from IPPR, who have been really helping businesses transfer money to a range of organisations, not just in their sector, but also, you know, local businesses and charities. And so I would recommend talking to someone like that, or indeed talking to some of the boroughs. Okay, all right, brilliant, thank you. Now, Lisa, you set out a very compelling case for apprenticeships and so forth, and you know, you talked in very glowing terms about some of the successes you had. I mean, to what extent is there nervousness amongst employers relating to, we might invest in individuals and then they'll just go off and, you know, find another job elsewhere, and we'll lose the sort of the benefit of the investment that we've made in them? Is that, you know, how worried should employers be about that, and how does WPP sort of address that concern amongst decision makers?
Yeah, I'm smiling as you ask that, Alex. I'm reminded of the quote, "Don't worry about the people you train who leave, worry about the ones you don't who stay," right? So we should absolutely be training our people to be the best that they possibly can. We put them in front of, you know, our wonderful clients, and so it isn't an option for us not to train people. I think the biggest shift for us, and I wouldn't say we've had nervousness, but it is different for the organisation, is just letting go of the old traditional routes into the industry and making people feel comfortable that you don't have to have certain qualifications, or you don't have to have come from certain universities to be successful within the industry. And I think, you know, intellectually people get that, emotionally there's, you know, it's something that people have to see and feel, but we genuinely just have the absolute best and brightest coming through. They go through selection days, and you know, we are still picking the absolute best, but we're just looking at it from a different starting point in terms of criteria and the experience that they have and the life experience they have.
Yeah, I guess, Lisa, it's crucial for employers to see this as a way of expanding, of growing the size of the cake, rather than this idea that, you know, in some ways individuals are taking other individuals' jobs, because we've already touched on this remarkable supply side constraint at the moment. I mean, there are other reasons for why, you know, there are inflationary pressures in the economy, but let's leave those alone for now. So I guess that, I mean, do you think that there should be, a question for all panelists really, but you know, what more could we be doing to be advocates, or could the government be doing to sort of highlight the importance or the opportunities apprenticeships bring? Do you think we should make this more aware in schools and adult education establishments as a sort of a pathway into work? I don't know, Sabrina, I know you've got you were born and bred in Camden. I mean, do you think this is something on the education side which we could be doing more with our local schools?
I think so, probably. I think there's always going to be the idea that like university or formal education is a very traditional route, and essentially until it's seen as a route for everyone rather than just like certain types of people who couldn't go to a top uni, they are always going to be seen a certain way. And I think you know, increasingly as you get apprenticeships in more and more of these top organisations, you will get, quite frankly, more and more middle class people who see it as a route for their children as well. Because when things were seen as like, oh, you're an apprentice and you're down the mechanics, that wasn't, I think for lots of people, that wasn't seen as like a thing for their children or the group that they are part of. But I think once people understand the full breadth of apprenticeships available, then they really do seem like valid options, particularly if you want to change your career, or you've had a break and you've had time to think, maybe after maternity leave or a sabbatical. I think apprenticeships would be a great way to get back into work, but you just need to know that they're not all at the same level. You can do it on the different, what was it, level 2 to level 6?
Yeah, I think that's a very, you know, I think you make a very powerful point, particularly around the extent to which COVID has led people to reconsider their choices, their professional choices, the sorts of things that we want to be doing, and how, you know, apprenticeships are potentially a very effective way into new career development. You know, Debbie was reminding me the other day that the university path does involve, you know, significant indebtedness, and apprenticeships is a way to actually earn some money as you learn, and you know, that for a lot of families or a lot of individuals is probably a very attractive alternative. I mean, there's a question here about I know we must finish very soon, but we'll have a bit of injury time. Is there any data on, Mark, perhaps the extent to which on success rates with apprenticeships, in terms of the proportion that find employment, or indeed the sort of retention rates from new hires that come through? I mean, Lisa, you'll have perspective on your different intake streams, and indeed Tricia as well. But Mark, is there any evidence on how effective apprenticeships are at the aggregate level in terms of skilling people up and retaining them?
Yes, although I don't have the actual data points to hand, but there's been lots of research over the years that point to why apprenticeships are a very loyal bunch, and you know, if you take them on, they will stick with you in your organization, and you know, they'll grow with you, and you know, that's testament to some of the, you know, big hitter business leaders that you see in London First membership. You know, so I think I'm right in saying that the CEO of Openreach, the current CEO of Openreach, was an apprentice, and you know, and that's just one example. So loyalty is a big one, and you know, if you're an apprentice, then you're not too far behind anymore the kind of graduate earnings premium that was, you know, that pushed graduates more favorably for many years. I think apprenticeships have caught up with that to a degree.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's very interesting, Mark. And Lisa, do you have a sense, sorry to put you on the spot again, but in terms of, and maybe it's too early to say, but what the sort of career progression, the value that apprenticeship streams create versus other more traditional streams, is there any sense of how it compares? Is it on par, would you say?
So I haven't seen any stats that show that it's any different either way from bringing in through the traditional routes. The thing I would say that's slightly different about our apprenticeship schemes from the kind of standard that Mark's outlined is that we bring people in with roles. So everyone has a role once they complete their training, if they would like to. So they're placed from the digital academy, they're placed into specific digital roles. So we like to keep everyone in the organisation for as long as we possibly can, and that's a key focus. And again, it's something that you really have to think about when you're embarking on these programmes. How do you retain that talent?
Okay, brilliant. Look, I'm conscious of time, so one final question, if I may, which has come through, which is just, I think, trying to ask a little bit about what the sort of the apprenticeship, the degree apprenticeship timeline looks like. Does anyone sort of know in broad terms what in terms of entry into an organisation, and perhaps the question is getting at how long it takes to qualify for the equivalent level of accreditation? I don't know. I'm kind of out of my comfort zone now. But is apprenticeships a sort of a long-term commitment for employers, would we say, with the individual? I mean, are we talking months or are we talking years?
The degrees, I think, probably years, but it very much depends on the different framework and the level and the framework. And the point is, there are so many different ones. And also so many models for delivering them, but the degree apprenticeships are generally 2, 3, sometimes 4 years, depending on how they're structured and the level. And some of the engineering ones very different to some of the kind of professional services topics. So isn't one size fits all, which I think is one of the challenges of the whole agenda, but it's not months.
Right, okay, great. Long-term commitment. Apprentices, yeah, okay, great. And Nina, you mentioned before, quite rightly, that your group organisation primarily works with smaller enterprises, perhaps. And indeed, I think our apprentice came through from your services, so that's another one to add to the list of achievements from your point of view statistically. Is there anything you'd just like to observe in terms of how that world is different, how smaller employers who may be listening should approach some of these questions versus the bigger players who, as Tricia has identified, may have more infrastructure internally to sort of run programs and so forth? I mean, what's the best way for smaller enterprises to get the best out of doing apprenticeship activity?
Well, I think that's why our service exists, because we recognise that it can be quite confusing for businesses that haven't recruited apprentices before, or even those that have but haven't maybe had such a positive experience. And so that the purpose of our service to kind of provide a wraparound support for you. There's so many training providers, it's hard to know which one to choose. Some of them are more reliable than others. There's really big variations with training providers. And also how to find somebody who's going to be passionate, able to commit, ready to learn in the right circumstances, eligible, all of these things. So Camden Apprenticeship Service can do all of that for you, basically. So all you need to do as a small employer, because you don't have lots of other staff members that can maybe do all these tasks, is provide us with a job description. We will check which standard most closely matches the job description. When I say standard, that's what apprenticeship qualifications are called. They're called standards. So we can check the level, check which qualification it should be, check which training providers would be best to deliver that qualification for you. And then we can advertise the role for you. So we can find a short list of local people who we think would be suitable for your role. So then basically you would interview the candidates. Hopefully you can identify somebody who's suitable, and then we would link you up with a training provider again to get them enrolled. And then for the duration of the contract, we're available to assist with anything really. So it might be that you're not happy with the service that the training provider is delivering, but you're not quite sure who to contact, and you don't want to have to scrabble around trying to find who that is. So we can do that for you. It might be that you identify that your apprentice needs pastoral support. So again, we can liaise with the apprentice to help them overcome any difficulties they're having outside work. Sorry if you can hear that noise, by the way, there's someone doing some drilling. And also if you've got any questions about the management of your apprentice, so you might be unsure about whether certain tasks are appropriate for an apprentice, or just any other general HR related questions, you can come to us about anything really. Even if we don't know the answer, we can find out who could help you. So it's just to make sure you're not doing it on your own, and that you've kind of got a team. If you don't have the big team in your service, we are your team, and it's a free service that you can use. So you can come back to us at any point if you have any other questions once your apprentice has started.
Brilliant. Nina, thank you so much. Look, I know many of you will have other things to rush off to now, and I've already made you late, Lisa, no doubt. So my apologies for that. So look, thank you to all our panelists and contributors today. We really appreciate it. And you know, particularly our public sector partners, our members, and indeed our friends at London First. It's been a really helpful, I think, educative, informative session, and I think this will be invaluable for those of our members and others who couldn't join today. So I think I'm going to hand back to Marcus, who was responsible for the tech and managed to save the day earlier on, to sort of do whatever happens next, Marcus, in terms of termination.
Thank you, everybody. I am just going to... We say tech, there we are. We're just going to close now. Thank you everyone for joining us. I will just end the session here. The recording will be available in future newsletters and in communications. And so thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.